Hey guys, Dotarn here, back with another Last Epoch video. So today we're going to be talking about skill interaction between Multistrike and Smite. Now, I love playing around with new builds, theory crafting my own builds, and putting together just the most random and off-meta types of things. This is what I love doing. I don't really like playing the meta builds simply because I just want to have fun. And to me, pushing the higher monoliths is not necessarily the most fun thing to do. I like creating new builds and creating new interactions with characters to see what different masteries are capable of. So first thing I noticed here is we have the skill Multistrike. Multistrike is a skill that basically just whacks something very quickly. Now the thing with Multistrike is every time you attack, you create a stack of armament. Armament can stack up to 2 times and each stack lasts 3 seconds. And when you have an armament stack, it causes a sword to come out and strike a nearby target. Now, my original concept behind the build that I wanted to plan out was to actually use Divine Bolts. So Divine Bolts is a node in the skill tree here. Whenever you hit an enemy with melee attack, you have a 20% chance to cast Divine Bolts. And the Divine Bolts actually scales off of attunement, spell, and fire damage. So essentially I wanted to plan out like a fire damage build which used Divine Bolts. And so Multistrike is a melee attack, which so happens that it can proc Divine Bolts. Going up the Divine Bolt tree, you have extra projectiles that can be spawned, and you can get up to 5, but you have a reduced chance to proc the Divine Bolts. So essentially, because it's a 50% reduced chance, you have only a 10% chance to proc Divine Bolts. And then finally, the last one would be for Divine Bolts to heal, which I wouldn't have taken out. It would just be these 6 nodes that I would be investing into the Paladin skill tree. So Divine Bolts was like the key to this particular build that I wanted to plan out. The other part of it as well was Healing Hands has a Divine Bolt node as well. You can plan up to 5, and so when you cast Healing Hands on yourself or an ally, you have a chance to proc Divine Bolts. Now the thing with this particular node is that this doesn't work unless you actually heal damage. So if you gain ward or if you're already at full health, this node actually does nothing. So the only reason why we would go into this is if you lose damage, then you can heal yourself to proc Divine Bolts. And the way we were going to do this was with Multistrike. So we have Multistrike here. Multistrike is a melee skill. And essentially the idea behind the build was to stack as much attack speed as possible so that we can cast Smite. Now, the reason why we're going to cast Smite is because Smite has an interaction here called Sacrifice, where you lose damage to gain more Smite damage. Smite scales off of fire, spell, and attunement, much like Divine Bolts. We're going to be attacking as quickly as possible with Multistrike, casting down smites. Smite will damage yourself. Healing Hands has a node where when you do a melee attack, you will cast Healing Hands, and this will cause the Healing Hands to heal yourself so that you could proc Divine Bolts as well. Long-winded explanation behind the build that I was creating. But whilst I was creating that build, I noticed that Smite doesn't actually target a single target enemy. And I'm not sure if this is a bug or if this is intended. Because as far as I can see, there are no nodes that specify that Smite shouldn't cast at a single target enemy. From the tooltip, it says each stack of armaments cause a sword to strike a nearby enemy. And I'm assuming if you're attacking one target, there's only one enemy. And so the sword, which is now replaced with a smite, should proc on a single target enemy. And I'll show this interaction in the game. We're playing Empowered Monoliths. Now, my gear isn't fully spec'd or anything like that. We just have a lot of attunement on our gear. So if you look at our character, we have 91 attunement, but my passive points are not spec'd to optimally to this build, and my gear is also not spec'd optimally as well. We just have some spell damage because we were going to try and create this build. We have some fire damage in here, we have some attunement, but essentially it's not fully optimized. But essentially, when we start attacking, the smite does proc, But you'll notice the Smite never actually procs on my single target enemy. Currently, my Multistrike costs no mana. My Healing Hand costs 0 mana. For some reason, there's no Smites being procced, and yet all my mana is gone. Now you can see there is a weird bug happening here because currently it says my Healing Hand costs 0 mana. This particular node, Cleric's Hammer, which is you have a chance to cast Healing Hammer around the target. This consumes mana based on Healing Hand's mana cost. You can see it says Healing Hand's mana consumption is 110% extra, but I have 0. So if, for example, it was still casting the base amount of Healing Hands, then it shouldn't reflect this on the tooltip. The other part of it is Healing Hands converted into a melee skill, which is why it can proc with Cleric's Hammer. So it looks like the interaction between Cleric's Hammer is not working properly, because you can see I clearly have 0 mana. If I use Multistrike, it's going to proc both Healing Hands and it's going to proc Smite as well. So really this should only be taking up 1 mana, but it looks like it's consuming way more than 1. So here, I'm attacking a single target. If I kill him and I run out of mana, my mana keeps going, even though there's no targets to hit. So that's the 2 weird issues that I have with this particular build that I'm going for. So first one, again, Multistrike is supposed to proc Smite, and based on what it says here, the armament will cause another sword to strike a nearby enemy. In which case, if we continue on, this is for armament stacks, this is for armor and block effectiveness per armament, and it says here when you have 0 stacks of armament, you have an additional sword when using Multistrike as if you had 1 stack. We've got one node in here which is regarding retaliation. And then we've got this one, which is each sword that is replaced is turned into Smite, and Smite cast this way costs its 4 mana per mana cost. So there's nothing in here that indicates a nearby target shouldn't be a single target either. But it looks like the Smite isn't triggering. If that's how it's supposed to happen or not supposed to happen, let me know if it's a bug or if that's intentional. And the other is Healing Hands, where Healing Hands is using double the mana consumption based on the Cleric's Hammer node. And again, if this is based on 4 mana cost, it should be stated so, but I've clearly spec'd into Healing Hands so that it costs. Wait, that was weird. At one point it just said 11 mana. Am I in the wrong area? Okay, we're just going to go for a run just to see how much Healing Hands is costing me, in which case the tooltip is not reflecting correctly. Let's have a look here. So I'm going to get hit by some enemies. We'll see if my mana goes down when I use Healing Hands. Okay, so my mana should be going down, but it's not. if I just use Healing Hands, my mana doesn't go down. I'm gonna stand in his poison pool as well. So this is correct. Healing Hands should cost 0 mana. So then why did it say 11 before? That's very interesting. Yeah, so you can see here my mana's going down. But when I attack normally, the Healing Hands doesn't cost any mana at all. It costs nothing, which is why... Yeah, so I'm attacking normally with Healing Hands. It's not doing any mana reduction loss or anything like that. Let's take a hit. Okay, so I've got hit in, but yeah, no mana cost is being lost. But when I attack with Multistrike, this is using up more than 3 mana. Yeah, so it's clearly supposed to cost nothing. On here it says nothing too. So yeah, so 3 weird things going on, sorry. So first is Multistrike not triggering when there's a nearby enemy meaning single target. Second thing is Healing Hands having no mana cost, with Multistrike costing no mana, Smite costing 3 mana, and my mana disappears much quicker than normal. So it looks like, I don't know if maybe Smite is triggering on a nothing target or on the single target, but no damage is actually happening. Let me know your thoughts if that's a bug or not a bug, whether or not that's intentional or not intentional. Personally, I feel like Multistrike should trigger on a single target. That way we can make this build work. My weird Divine Bolts build. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. As always, have an awesome day. Bye for now.